So as we initially started our implementation,
S&OP, Sales and Operations Planning, it's a process, it's a technology, but it also involves people. And that's the part of S&OP that often gets ignored or underrated. Well, that's also the part we're going to be talking about today in my conversation today with Eric Kulikowski. He is Senior Director of Supply Chain Optimization with Philips Home Healthcare Solutions. Eric, welcome to the program.
good morning.
And it is fascinating, is it not, to finally talk about people, an aspect of S&OP that really hasn't been discussed enough. What, in your opinion, I hear you talk about the right tech approach to S&OP. Would you explain what that means?
In looking for the right tech solution, it's a mixture of culture, process, and technology. And when we look at engineering business processes, often, especially if we are technology type people or technology type companies, it's very easy for us to jump to the technology part of the solution and look at that as the solution, whereas technology is really an enabler. And looking at the design of the process, the relationships that people have to have within that process to be successful is a piece of that doesn't get enough attention. And knowing that communication and relationships and trust amongst the people in the process are really what make it successful. And technology oftentimes is an enabler of that process once you move through those cultural barriers that some organizations have.
Yeah, so expand on that for me. What are some of the people aspects of S&OP?
One of the biggest things that we had at Philips Home Healthcare was we did not have an integrated process that involved sales, marketing, operations, finance, customer service. It was very old school in that marketing would develop the sales plan and give it to operations with very little interaction or collaboration. And so in our journey to find that right tech solution, we ensured that people understood what the role of each job was in sales, marketing, operations, and the impacts that the decisions they made in those specific areas were known. That a salesperson would know that if I'm going to give away 20 free devices, what that's going to do in the manufacturing process or what that's going to do within the supply chain. So creating those relationships and opening those lines of communication just allows so much more rich conversation to occur. Conversations that would never have occurred in the past.
Were people automatically open to that, or did they display what people in every company all over the world display, and that it is an initial reluctance to share outside their individual silos?
That's a great question, and you're exactly right. There, in spots, was some hesitation to share. We were exposing performance data and exposing pieces of the organization that may not have been exposed before. And by example, let me tell you that forecast accuracy is something that we never publicized within our company before. And so the people that are responsible for creating those forecasts had never been publicly judged in that way of what their performance was like. And so for us, very quickly in the sales and operations planning process, to be measuring, discussing, and brainstorming on ways to improve forecast accuracy, it was something completely different. So it was a self-imposed barrier that the sales and marketing people had to get past. And in a complementary fashion, the finance and operations people had to know how to gently and collaboratively have those discussions rather than throwing darts at the sales and marketing people for their poor forecasts.
So how did you achieve that level of understanding and that whole new spirit of cooperation among these various people?
Well, a big part of it was we started with some team-based activities. We didn't just jump into what is our sales and operations planning process and what is our solution. We dedicated and decided early on that team came first, process came second, technology came third. And by taking that approach, by allowing the people to get to know each other, their strengths, their weaknesses, their concerns, and what they are able to bring to the table, by creating that team first, and then discussing process second, and then allowing us to move forward and look at technology and solutions, it allowed that team to come together and get to know each other a lot better and open up so that camaraderie began to exist. And people that had never worked together in the business environment before now were very comfortable allowing themselves to be a little vulnerable in the process.
Were there any issues as to ownership of the forecast, ownership of the big number that was supposed to drive the organization?
Yes, there was. In our history, marketing was the organization that developed the sales forecast. As strange as that sounds, marketing developed the sales forecast. Sales had very little involvement. And by integrating several of our sales team members into the sales and operations planning process, it required first some collaboration between sales and marketing on a dynamic basis, not just once a year. And secondly, it required sales to step up and talk about some things that were going on in the market with our competition. What were they doing to promote product in the field, and what was going on? We are in the medical device industry, so reimbursement is very important to us. So Medicare making decisions and how that's driving the behaviors in the marketplace dynamically, sales had to bring that to the table, and that was input that never happened before. We typically in operations would be reactive to what sales is doing in the field. Now we can be proactive because we know ahead of time what sales planning is all about.
Yeah, and you just don't also want to be throwing that number over the fence to manufacturing and say, here it is, here's the fait accompli. Do you not want some initial feedback or some collaboration with manufacturing from the beginning so there's a full understanding of whether everyone going in the right direction?
Correct. As we look at playing out options of what we might be able to do, whether it's in response to a competitive action or a new product being launched or some new features being launched, or even perhaps if we have a supply chain issue that's going to constrain the availability of a given product. We do in those initial demand planning meetings every month allow manufacturing to give some feedback in response, be it capacity or other supply chain things that could in some ways force the sales and marketing folks to create alternative plans.
So who sits in on the S&OP meetings?
It's quite collaborative now. It's very cross-functional. We have manufacturing, global sourcing, distribution, customer service, product service and repair, inside sales, outside sales, global marketing, and finance.
Wow, that's impressive.
It's
They're all sitting around a table, or at least in some kind of a meeting situation.
It's a virtual, because we have people literally all over the world. One of our team members is in France.
Mm-hmm. So everybody owns the number in a way, although I'm sure that it has to be a final, marketing or sales has to end up being the ultimate generator of the number, but everyone has ownership in it to some degree.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we tie all that back to metrics and to software, though?
Sure. So as we initially started our implementation of sales and operations planning, or what we call integrated business planning, about 18 months ago, we proactively and vocally went in and said that moving metrics in the right direction was not priority one. Creating the team and getting the process working and repetitive and sustainable was priority number one. Our goal was to just make the needle quiver a little bit on the metrics, not necessarily move the needle. So as the business area becomes more mature and we have a process that is solid and we know we have the right people at the right level of engagement, we then move on to metrics. And our metrics that we track today are forecast accuracy, production plan, or actual production to plan, inventory levels to plan, and financial reconciliation. How well are our plans reconciling back to the annual operating plan of the company?
And that serves each of the departments that's responsible for each of those metrics. That is fed back to them and is utilized by them for future. They're not just numbers that you come up with and nobody ever does anything about.
Correct. We review that metric dashboard on a monthly basis or more if there's an anomaly, and corrective actions are required. We review that metric scorecard with our executive team every month, proactively.
How long a span of time did this effort take for you to come to this point, from the moment you decided it was time to make some changes in the S&OP process and where we are today?
We are about 20 months into our journey. So it was in the fall of 2011 that we made the decision that we needed to have more command and control in the organization relative to planning. And we spent about 3 months doing research and benchmarking. Benchmarked 14 different organizations as well as other pieces of Philips to understand how they were doing the process and what technologies they were using. We chose a pilot, made that successful, moved into a second pilot. That now has become successful, and this week we are launching our third business area of the company. And with this third business area engaged, we will now have covered about 90% of the revenue generating product areas in the
Are
company.
you looking to capture that last 10% at some point? Where are you going
Yes,
next?
yes, we will. It's not squarely on the radar screen right now. Our goal is to capture this first 90%. I suspect that within the next 2 years we will have captured 100%. So it's a journey. Implementing sales and operations planning is not buy software, train some people, and now you have a process. It's a journey throughout the company to make it stick and make it sustainable.
Eric, thank you so much for helping us to understand the journey of Philips Home Healthcare Solutions toward the application of S&OP and the involvement of people in the process. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
I've been speaking with Eric Kulikowski of Philips Home Healthcare Solutions. Thank you very much for watching.